Hello everybody, my name is KingStix and welcome to patch 8.6. I'm going to try to get you through this as fast as possible, trying to give you the information you need to know. So if you don't want to go through this whole thing, I'll let you know right now that this patch was an overall buff to any champion that prioritizes damage, except for AP mages. AP mages and AP items didn't really receive much of a buff at all, but things more towards the AD sides of damage got an overall buff. Alright, with that being said, let's just jump right into it. This goes against what I initially said about damage people getting buffed, but Duskblade is getting nerfed. It was just too strong that every AD assassin jungler was building it. It was a must. I'm glad they're nerfing it. This will allow other AD assassin items to be more pickable. Things like Youmuu's or Edge of Night will be a lot more viable. One thing I'm not happy to see is the nerf on ranged champions. If anything, ranged champions really needed a buff on it. ADCs like Jhin are really struggling right now. They don't have the lethality that they need to carry. They have to go these goofy crit builds. So this will definitely hurt Jhin and just really finish killing off lethality Jhin. I think you're still going to see some AD junglers building this item just because it is so useful. Also with the ward breaking ability got buffed a little bit. Overall, I think it's a just nerf other than the range nerf as well. Graves is getting an attack damage growth buff and a magic resist growth buff, which is going to be good for him because he really didn't have any good way to fight against mages other than dodging their abilities with his dash. His smoke screen is also getting a wind up buff by 0.1 seconds, which may not seem like a lot, but it's actually pretty strong. Not only that, but the vision reduces now applies more quickly. This is going to be very frustrating whenever Graves goes in on a ranged unit. You won't be able to see him, auto attack him or anything, so AD carries aren't going to like this one bit. Kayn is god awful in pro play. He's just not playable because they keep track of where he is. He doesn't get his essence and then he takes too long to scale. He's not very useful in solo queue. People make loads of mistakes and don't keep track of where he is, so he's kind of OP in solo queue until you get into the highest elos like up in challenger. This buff isn't going to make much sense unless you are the highest of elos. Kayn is getting his bonus attack damage on his W up by 0.1. Also on his R, he's getting 0.25 bonus attack damage as well. This is a lot of extra damage that's going to make Kayn even more frustrating in solo queue. 𝐃𝐨𝐩𝐿 is finally getting the nerf he needed. As a jungler, he had really good clear, believe it or not, since his W is AoE. Lots of damage, could pretty much solo anybody as long as they weren't a monster like Warwick. 𝐃𝐿𝐿 is getting an interesting change. The base damage on his Q is going a little bit down in the earlier levels, but the scaling on it is getting way buffed, plus the isolated bonus is getting way buffed. So as 𝐃𝐿𝐿 gets more and more items, you're going to see his damage get really crazy. So just expect a true late game 𝐃𝐿𝐿 to have that much bursting potential in the late game. To counteract this late game monster that they've created, they've taken away the bonus damage that his W deals to monsters, which is considerable since 𝐃𝐿𝐿 does have a little bit of trouble clearing AoE camps in his first clear. In lower elos, this shouldn't really matter. In higher elo, this will make a big difference since junglers are a lot more aggressive in higher elo in the early game. MF's getting a tiny attack damage growth. Nocturne got a buff last patch, which increased his ult duration and one other thing. Now they're giving his ultimate more damage and more ratio scaling. This is going to make Nocturne even more frustrating to play against with very little counterplay. I believe this buff was a bit unnecessary, or at least to how far they took it. Rengar has been a big bust ever since they reverted him, so now they're giving him extra Q damage ratio, E damage ratio increase, and R damage ratio increase. Hopefully this will get Rengar out there on the Rift. With Rengar and Nocturne getting big buffs, you're also seeing 𝐵𝐸𝐿 get a sizable buff as well, getting bonus damage on his Q, which doesn't seem like a lot at earlier levels, but in the late game, that 0.7 bonus attack damage scaling is insane. If you have 200 attack damage, that's 60 damage plus 50, 110 extra damage you get for free in the late game. Talon has been a big disappointment lately. He can't hold his own in the mid lane. He doesn't have enough sustain. He doesn't have enough burst. They're trying to make up for that by buffing his passive and also giving his ultimate a lot of bonus attack damage. It's hard to say how this will play out, but it'll definitely make Talon a lot more viable in the early game and the mid game. Wukong is getting an attack damage growth. He's also getting a higher attack damage ratio on his Q, which is a little surprising because in the late game, Wukong can be a very abusive champion. With a Q max, you'll definitely see him be more abusive in the early and mid game as well. Zed is getting a random buff. Zed is already a really strong champion in solo queue, and the pro scene, you don't see him that much because he's easier to shut down with teamwork. In solo queue though, he just runs free and kills everything. They're taking away a tiny bit of damage if his hurricane hits more than one person. However, they're making it do way more damage if he lands multiple shurikens on the same target. Before, the shuriken used to deal 75% of its total damage. Now, every shuriken that hits the target will deal the full amount, which is insane. Additionally, now if Zed ults you, you'll be taking more damage, going all the way up from 45% at rank 3 to 55%. May not seem like a lot, but this is definitely going to help Zed stay relevant in the late game. I'm not a huge fan of it since there's already not that much counterplay for Zed, but Zed mains are definitely going to be happy about this. 𝐃𝐨𝐩𝐿 has been a really hit and miss champion. If the enemy bot lane pokes you down and really makes you pay and you never get a chance to scale. She's a late game monster and has insane damage on tanks especially. 𝐃𝐨𝐻 is getting buffs all across the board. She's getting attack range increase, which I do not feel is right. She's already extremely abusive in the late game. She's also getting her passive and Q ability power ratios increased and her Q range increased. Also, her E cast time is decreased, her E movement speed is being increased as well, and her R radius is being increased too. So she's just getting buffs all across the board. Definitely expect to see her a lot more. And I personally intend on banning her. I've played against jungle cases who are very abusive and there's very little you can do. They can 1v1 pretty much anybody and they're very mobile. Riot has taken away the ability to buy sight wards. They've also taken the ability to buy the tracker's knife. So Lee Sin has been struggling with that loss of utility since he loves to ward jump. To make up for this, they're giving him extra energy on his passive, which I'm fine with. They're even giving him some extra range on his Q, which is a little crazy because that ability is pretty strong. And then finally, this is something where I think they kind of jumped the gun a little bit on his R. They're giving it loads of extra base damage in the mid and late game. When it is level 3, it's going up from 450 damage to 600 damage. If Lee Sin is snowballing throughout the early and mid game, before you have a chance to quite catch up in the early late game, he's going to be having an extra 150 damage. Very abusive. Lucian's W base damage is being increased and R damage ratio is being increased as well. This is a needed buff. Lucian's been kind of shitty in the bot lane. Hopefully these buffs will get him back on track. Quinn has a long change in the patch notes. Long story short, she is getting an overall buff by quite a bit. The biggest one to mention is on her R. Now when her Sky Strike applies, the vulnerable mark applied to all enemy champions hit. That's a pretty big deal and an opportunity for her to get off a lot more damage. Other than that though, Quinn's not going to be that strong. She's very hard to bounce because she's so fast with her ultimate. So she really shouldn't be that strong in a competitive environment anyways. This is just something to help her out a little bit more in solo queue. Rakan's getting buffs across the board with his Q, W, and E. I think this is a good thing because I don't like passive lanes in the bot lane that much. There's too many things like Janna and Soraka being picked. So with things like Rakan getting buffed, this is going to help boost the tempo a little bit. Xayah and Rakan are getting a duo nerf. Their basic attacks no longer trigger feathers from each other's deadly plumage. Sharia's Revelry was taken out a while ago. I think it was taken out in like around season 5, season 4. Really long time ago. They're bringing it back since they removed the Talisman's Ascension AoE speed up a while ago, and they want more team speed and more team engages. This will definitely help heavy engaged team comps and hurt team comps that rely on poking. Abyssal Mask is getting a really weird nerf. They're trying to make it a tank item by reducing the aura radius, which bear in mind was already very short for most mages, down from 700 down to 325. That is huge. There's going to be no mage building that now because there's no real mage who can take advantage of that other than maybe Kassadin or another AP melee mage. The magic damage amplifier is getting buffed by 5%. This isn't going to be enough though, and on very rare occasion are you going to see a tank build this because it's going to be very difficult to get more than one person in the 325 short radius to make it really worth it. This is definitely a nerf to people like Ryze and Cassiopeia who would love building this item prior to this nerf. Seraph's Embrace has been really strong after they added 20% cooldown to it, so they are nerfing the shield ratio down by 5% and nerfing the shield duration down to 2 seconds, which I think is really important. Seraph's Embrace really did need a nerf. Deadman's Play is getting an irrelevant nerf. Gunzu's Rageblade is getting an interesting change. Overall, you don't want to build this as a first item anymore. This is definitely going to hurt 𝐾𝐿𝐷. 𝐾𝐿𝐷 had a massive power spike whenever he rushed Rageblade. Also, people like Kel would get her second or third item. This is definitely a 4th, 5th, or 6th item now. It's meant to be more of a scaling item if you're building a lot of AD or AP. So I can't imagine this being used quite as much as it is now. It is cheaper to build. I am really interested to see how this plays out. 𝐃𝐨𝐩𝐿 is a little bit more affordable now. Static Shift is finally getting a nerf. It was doing just a little bit too much damage, so they're bringing that down to 140, and now it no longer deals bonus damage to minions. Fuck you, Tryndamere. Your days of mindlessly split pushing a wave with 1 autos are over. Rapid Fire Cannon is getting a slight buff. This is definitely going to help out Caitlyn. Ignite is getting a buff. This is really cool. I think this is much needed. I've been seeing way too many mid laners and bot laners taking heal every time. Now with Ignite's base damage and late game damage getting buffed by a little bit, this will definitely help it to get back into the meta. Not only that, but heal is getting a cooldown increase by quite a bit. 30 seconds. Ignite's on a 210 second cooldown, and then heal's on a 270 second cooldown. That means if you're fighting someone and you ignite them and they heal, you have a whole minute before they get their heal up next time that you'll have your ignite up. So you'll have 60 seconds in the near future where you'll have your ignite and they won't have their heal. This is a pretty big deal, especially in the bot lane. A new keystone is being added because people bitch and complain about Bruisers not being strong enough all the time. It's called Conquer. It's essentially Grasp the Undying, but for Bruisers. After you've been in combat for 4 seconds, you get loads of attack damage, and 20% of the damage you do to enemy champions is true damage. Our champions like Fiora and Irelia are going to love this. I don't know if it's technically the right thing to do. Grasp the Undying already wasn't a great keystone. This will definitely finish killing Grasp the Undying. I can't imagine many people still taking it. With all the nerfs to damage dealers, they decided, you know what, bone plating is too strong. We really want to put damage dealers over the top, so the duration of bone plating is going down from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. Definitely sucks for tank players. There's a new keystone in Resolve, making it more desirable for Bruisers once again. I can't imagine an AD carry taking this at all. It wouldn't make sense because as a secondary rune page, most AD carries take sorcery. For the Gathering Storm, definitely going to see only Bruisers taking this as their secondary tree and maybe getting this for a little bit extra damage and a little bit more health in the early game. Once again, another buff to Bruisers. Iron Skin and Mirror Shell are getting removed out of the defensive tree, which doesn't matter at all. No one was taking those two anyway. I usually don't cover side topics like this, but this is worth mentioning. If you did get demoted down to 0 honor, which is dishonorable, it was very difficult to climb back up. I think it took over like 50 games. It takes forever. Even if you are raking in the honors, I wouldn't know. So now they're making it easier to get from dishonorable to honor 2. They don't say how much easier. They don't show the stats, so it doesn't mean much by them saying it. Voice chat is now up. So if you're not a fan of Discord or Skype, now you can use a built-in voice chat in League of Legends with the people in your party. There are a number of bug fixes. I went through them and I was very disappointed to find that they didn't mention anything about a Warwick bug fix, so I'm assuming the Warwick bugs I was personally dealing with and many others were dealing with are still there. I will try Warwick for a couple of games, maybe 4 or 5, and if I run into any bugs, I'll just stop playing him. I really wish they would have addressed it or at least mentioned that there were some issues. A little bit frustrating there. There's 4 main skins coming out this patch. We got Gun Goddess Misfortune. Basically Riot going for a big money grab and trying to get everyone to spend their RP on a skin that's kind of meh. And then we have the Hextech Alistar. They're trying to buff the loot a little bit. I think Hextech Ali's pretty cool. We also have Pizza Delivery Sivir. I'm not a big fan of skins like these. It's not because I think they're necessarily ugly, but I feel like they damage the integrity of League of Legends themselves. I also have this issue with Battle Bunny Riven. Whenever you have all these serious looking champions like Jace, Jarvan, Fiddlesticks, Kog'Maw, Renekton, every champion has its feel. Everything's serious. Like you're in a 5v5 death match with these 5 enemy players and with your 4 teammates. And then you have people having these goofy ass skins like, ooh, Sivir throws a pizza at you, or oh, Riven's a whore, she's wearing this bunny suit. This is another skin that damages the integrity in my opinion. We have Birdio Galio, basically just eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and he's wearing a bird costume. I don't really see how that pertains to Galio, I guess because he's a gargoyle. And we also have some chromas coming out for Renekton and Pugma. I'm a big fan of chromas. I think chromas are cool because it changes the way your champion looks, but without really damaging their identity. Granted, it is for Pugma, which is a little dumb, but I mean, what can you do, right? It's gonna make skins and you can't stop them. We also have 4 more emotes getting released. Personally, my favorite one is the Poppy. I think it's really cool and creepy. And that is gonna wrap up patch notes 8.6. If you guys enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out a lot. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.